Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of I'm Not Gonna Be Quiet. My name's Danica, and I'm your host. I'm excited that you decided to join us for another episode where this is a space where folks step into the circle of community to share the path that they have traveled to find liberation after periods of staying silent about their pain and experienced harm. In each interview, we get a chance to hear and learn from our guests what they've refused to be quiet about, what their silence cost them, and the price they have paid for their freedom. So you're here. We may as well get comfortable and let's get free together. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine. I'm really excited that she decided to be my first guest. Her name is Dr. Ty Adams. And, moving through the pandemic, we've all experienced just tremendous loss. However, one of the things that have come from this collective trauma is friendship. Having to create pods and social distance allowed me to get to know other families that I, in any other situation, might not have discovered. And Ty is one of those friends that we found each other during COVID. Our families clicked. We spent plenty of time at the playground through winter, summer, spring, and fall. And we've continued our friendship, and this is a lifer for me. I'm proud to introduce Dr. Ty Adams. She's a board-certified psychiatrist. She identifies as Black and queer. Her pronouns are she, her, and hers. And the center of who she is a mom. So welcome, Ty.
Thank you, Danica. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be your first guest. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, and I'm grateful. So thank you for coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to jump right into it.
All right.
Right? It kind of just makes sense to, you know the name of the podcast. And so my first question is, what have you been asked to be quiet about?
It's such a deep question, and I've given it some thought. I want to say, the biggest thing that I've been asked to be quiet about is the reality that working moms can't have it all, because working moms can't do it all. It's impossible. It's impossible to be the best, in my case, physician, psychiatrist, professional, providing all of the expertise, and then having enough to be the best mom, making it to all of the rehearsals, all of the recitals, all of the games, and cooking the meals and making the beds and tending the boo-boos. You can't have or do it all as a working mom. And I've been forced to be quiet about that.
I'm not going to say that I disagree. I think you know me well enough to know that, also for me, the center of my identity is being a mom. Not that there aren't other parts, but one of the most valuable parts of my identity is motherhood. And so I'm curious for you, where do you think the ask to be quiet about, not being able to have it all came from?
I think the initial, for me, individually, I don't, speaking from my own experience, the initial ask, I think, came from the example that was set for me by my own mother, who, in my opinion, certainly did her very best at doing it all and having it all, or at least I thought she was doing it all until I became a mother myself and realized what was sacrificed. But society asks us to do that too. Like, it asks us to rise to the top of these, business ladders, to, be bosses, but still expects us to be great moms. And that doesn't even include all the other great things we have to do. We have to be great lovers and great partners and great friends. So yeah, it's a bit of both worlds. It's what I saw and experienced growing up, and also just what society has put out there as, the gold star achievement.
That's a lot. It's a lot to recognize that this might not be working for you and to give yourself grace. And I'm curious, how did you come to that awareness, particularly in your field? Your field is pretty competitive. Just doing really surface research. You're a psychiatrist, and I learned just a couple of days ago that there are only about 42,000 psychiatrists in the United States of America. And 2% of them are Black.
2%?
2.
Yeah, that's worse than I thought.
So I imagine that probably, put a lot of pressure on you. I'm obviously Black. And so I know what that's like to exist in these corporate spaces, these spaces that are, based off of capitalist models where, you're expected to produce and overproduce beyond your 40 hours salaried working week. So how is that for you? How did you have this kind of for lack of a better expression, come to Jesus moment when you're working in such a competitive industry and also trying to balance being a great mom?
Yeah, so I think it was always there, kind of, guiding me in subtle ways. In the medical field, there's a term that we use, well, I don't even know if it's a medical field thing, but in medical school, there was a term that we used for folks who just were first to show up, were first to answer questions, were first to complete assignments, just chipper and competitive. We called them gunners, right? Gunners, people who are gunning for that top slot. And when I'm going through my medical education, I would see folks who had that calling, I guess, on their life and on their spirit. And there was always this nudging voice inside of me that was like, yeah, no, I want to enjoy life, right? But I knew I had to compete. I had to get into residency, which is, an application process, an interview process. You have to be selected. I had to get into fellowship, same thing. And every time that you take a step further in training, there's a certain degree of going for it, being a gunner that you have to do to make it. I think that voice never went away. Like that voice that said, like, that doesn't fit me. It doesn't fit my personality. It doesn't fit my style. There's got to be more to success than just the success that you find professionally. And so wanting to be a mom from the very earliest age I can remember, wrapping my baby dolls in actual baby blankets that I actually learned how to swaddle correctly, probably in like first grade. I took it very seriously, the calling on my life to be a mom. And that was like one of my early callings. When it became this career in mental health as a second calling, I had to figure out a way to merge both of those. And I think the mom stuff I anticipated coming, with marriage and all of that. I figured that I had to really dive into the medical stuff first, right? Get all of that done, give all of those hours, that strenuous kind of labor, being on call 24 hours, several times a week, starting your days super early, ending them late. You get into that groove, dedicating your energy to that because you know where it's going to get you. And you get there. And then it's like, oh yeah, but I want to be also, I want to have my own family. I want to be a mom. So then here comes motherhood. And the up at night feedings. And I mean, just from the very beginnings, even before your child is born, as you're I was carrying my children with me through residency because I gave birth to my oldest daughter in residency and my youngest daughter in fellowship, which came after that. And wow. Yeah, right? Like, it was hard to have like preterm contractions while on call. It was hard to fight the fatigue that comes with pregnancy, and be alert to answering questions on rounds and meeting patients' needs and supervisors' demands. And I got into the mode of like, you got to hide the mom stuff so that you can do the professional stuff. And that's kind of what I saw in my own mother too. I saw the mom stuff because I lived with her and she raised me with my father, my siblings. But when we were out and about, she was addressed and known as the attorney. And so I guess I just kind of, from that point on, felt like I had to do the mom stuff in the background and do all of the professional stuff in the foreground. But I didn't want to slack on the mom stuff. I wanted to nurse. I wanted to bond. Those first 4 years of your children's lives are the most precious years. You never get that back. And I think I realized slowly, like, this is impossible to balance. There has to be something better. That gunner, that fierce competitor, that successful woman, doctor, physician, Black psychiatrist that I can be, it can't be everything for me to have a degree of success, feeling successful from my life. It can't be the only thing.
So I'm so curious because I hear you talk about, you kind of had this image of, being that successful corporate working mom from what your own mom modeled for you. But
Mm-hmm.
you started on that path, and then it sounds like you started to deviate from it. What what was the catalyst? Like, what was the moment that made you kind of reimagine what that looked like, particularly what it looked like contrary to what you had seen and lived through with your own mom?
Yeah. It's kind of a long story, and I don't want to make it a long story because I think it's probably a common story. So I feel like folks can relate. The home life suffered as a result of, I think, where I put most of my energies into work. When I finished my fellowship, I took a job, a 9-to-5 outpatient psychiatrist job, evaluating children for autism. And it was a sweet job. It was regular hours. I think it was more like 9 to 3, really. And the work was enjoyable. I basically played with children and then wrote up evaluations. I was happy with that, but that desire to make more money, because money, of course, is a good sign of success, made me pick up some side work in crisis situations, like being the psychiatrist who evaluates folks in behavioral health crises. And I worked and I made more, and I worked more and made more, and that was great. And my home life suffered. I wasn't a bad mom. I was a great mom, I think, but I certainly had issues in my relationships. I ended up getting divorced. I ended up getting into work as a way of like coping with feelings of personal failure. I got into unhealthy relationships, one in particular that was so unhealthy that I really dove headstrong into work. I ended up leaving that job, that sweet gig, and picking up crisis work full time, and then adding to that additional hours back in outpatient, this time with mainly sort of general population adults and children seeking behavioral health medication. And before I knew it, I had this whirlwind of 60-hour work weeks, 2 children in elementary school who need mommy because, their dad was not the primary parent. I was. And then partnership with an unhealthy partner. And when all of that piled in together, I ended up in a place where I was working and overworking myself and running from the fact that I wasn't giving enough at home to my kids, and had also created unhealthy dynamics at home in an unhealthy relationship. And that resulted in trauma. I think that resulted from neglect in some ways. And that trauma that my family experienced brought everything to a screeching halt for me. And it made me reorganize my priorities entirely. I always knew that my children were the most important thing to me from the very beginning. I thought that working and getting the money that they would need to go to college and all of that was good mothering. But what they needed was my presence. And once the trauma happened, that it became a requirement that my presence be constant and that I be available. And I dropped everything. I mean, I didn't drop everything, because then we couldn't pay the rent or the mortgage. But I dropped the full-time psychiatry life and the 60-hour work weeks, and I became a full-time mom and a part-time psychiatrist to sort of find balance. So that was my come to Jesus moment. It was, unfortunately, it was trauma. But out of that, there has been such growth and healing for me as a person, as a mom, as a doctor, and for my family.
Thank you for sharing all of this. And I think you're right, Ty. I think your experience, your story is something that most moms can identify with. Because, I see, the patterns, right? This is kind of like what patriarchy looks like, right? Women are expected to work outside of the home and also be the primary caregiver within the home. And so, from what you're sharing, I see this is kind of the lifestyle that you had as a child. This is what you saw as a child with your own mom. And then when you started undergrad and pre-med and med school and fellowship and et cetera, you have to submit pretty much all of your waking hours to that program in order to, become a doctor. And then from there, it seems like it just continued, right? Your work week started at 40 hours and then it became 60 hours. Mm-hmm. And then trauma happened. And so it sounds like kind of living out that whole women can have it all and do it all. It seems like it cost you quite a bit.
It did. Medical training or training to become an MD teaches the trainee to sacrifice themselves. It becomes ritualistic, everyday sacrifice, really. I mean, so there's a personal toll, right? Because when you're in a grueling kind of work schedule, your physical body takes damage. I actually developed and was diagnosed with an autoimmune illness as a result of, really from my rheumatologist perspective, sleep deprivation. I mean, that's what, when I was diagnosed, that's what I was told could have certainly brought out this illness. The personal toll, though, means nothing when you think about trauma affecting your children, right? I would gladly cut off my limbs if it meant that my children would be guaranteed to be safe. So yeah, it set me up, that training, it set me up for a life of sacrifice, but I didn't think that would come to my baby's doorstep.
Right.
And when it did, it was like, nah, we can't, no, this is not living, and this is not healthy for us. So in the process of providing that safety, because when your children are harmed, they need their mom, they need consistency, they need schedules that look the same, they need waking up in the same bed every morning and going to bed the same way every night. They need to know that you're there. You have to reestablish a normal rhythm, and then also process all of the hurt and the emotion in them, right? Helping them to process that, which meant like therapy and things like that, but also myself, therapy for me so I can process my stuff. And when that became the priority and I cut my hours like that, I started living and feeling better and more successful than I had felt when I was making twice as much and working twice as long, 3 times as long.
I think that's so interesting, and that's such a key offering to our audience. It sounds like, you know, you were living and avoiding, and then trauma kind of fell at your doorstep, and it had you rethink and reimagine what your role was in this world, and specific to your role with your children. And then it sounds like you just flipped how you define success. It was no longer defined by how much money you made, which gave you opportunity to, you know, provide some comfort and different resources for your children. But now it sounds like your success is defined by how happy your children are and how you get to mother them. Was it easy to have that kind of revelation? Did it take you some time? Was there some resistance? Was there any like shame?
Oh yeah, it wasn't easy. No, I spent time in therapy talking about how I would do it. First of all, there was financial insecurity. I don't throw money away, but I'm not the best saver, or at least I wasn't. And so I was worried that by cutting my hours that I would put my family in some sort of a financial bind. So just working through the anxiety related to that, which had, you know, that started before I ever stopped working, those long hours. Working through that anxiety was tough. I had to do that in therapy. I had to do that by meeting with a financial planner. And thankfully, I was connected with someone who took special interest in helping Black professionals develop an understanding of how they can make their money work for them. And yeah, I had to lean into the community to educate me on what that transition would mean well before that transition happened. And then when the transition happened, fear, you know, still echoes. Like I had about 6 months of mortgage, bills, tuition saved in order to make that transition. Everybody is not going to be able to do that, but I did that because I was scared of what might happen if I didn't develop these kind of plans. And you plan for something, you execute it, and then you get there, right? So like it worked. It worked because I wanted it, and I leaned into the resources around me to help me figure out how to do it. But I was scared the whole way. I was scared before, during, and after. Sometimes I still get scared. I make a fraction of what I used to make, but I live simply, and my kids are happy and healthy, and they love their school, and I can pay that tuition. They love their home, and I can pay that mortgage. And we don't need a whole lot of other stuff that I thought was maybe a marker for success. There are toys that went to donation, clothes that went to donation, trips that, we got some great pictures of to remember. But we still have more love and more memories and more everyday kind of moments of joy that we share together now than we did when we were, as a family, able to do all of that spending. But fear still creeps in every now and again. But I pray. I still talk to my therapist. I sometimes have to move my body to get through that anxiety. Sometimes I have to take longer showers than usual to get through that. And life has been good.
I love hearing that, because I feel like globally, but also just nationally, we're at a tipping point where there's an opportunity for us to experience this major paradigm shift, where we just kind of rethink what it takes to have a healthy and balanced quality of life specific to work and family and friendships and, spirituality and etc. And so I have seen, along with everyone else, this great resignation. Right? I've seen the soft quitting. And so I feel like those are signs that something's changing. And I think you are, right in that group of folks who are saying that what we've done is not working any longer. And you are making the choice to do something different and individualize to create your own definition of success and joy. And so I want to commend you. That's not easy always. And there certainly can be a price that you pay for stepping away from such huge systems. But it sounds like you and your family are better for it.
Well, thank you, girl, for commending me. Yeah, so COVID, that's the other thing. Like, COVID changed a lot of stuff. I was working in the emergency crisis realm when COVID hit. I think it's possible that we all in my work area had COVID before we knew what COVID was. Because it was like a crazy flu went through everybody, and then like a couple months later we started hearing about COVID, and then by the time it hit, and it was, wearing PPE, protective equipment every day, all of us had already had something that we didn't even know what it was. And so, but COVID, it made us pare down. A lot of people started, lost their jobs, unfortunately, but then in the loss gained a new perspective. A lot of people started working from home and gained a different perspective. Like, hey, the office is not a requirement. Like, I can do this from home. Working from home has given me the ability to be the full-time mom that I am. I'm so glad. I feel such sympathy towards those who lost loved ones with COVID, and it was it was and continues to be a horrible illness. But the transformation that happened that allowed me to be a psychiatrist, help my patients, and be a full-time mom by working at home, that has added invaluable amount of just security to my life. So yeah, everybody's shifting. Workers are saying like, nah, you're going to have to pay us if you want us to be in this place. And I feel all of that, and I respect all of those demands because, you know, it's real. Going through a crisis, I went through a personal trauma and realized a lot of stuff, right? We went through a collective trauma with COVID and like realized a lot of stuff. The most important thing to preserve is life and health. And you can't preserve life and health putting yourself at risk every day for a paycheck, putting your emotional health at risk every day. Nah, there has to be a better balance to that. So yeah, that was a little bit of a rant, but I know you feel me.
Yes. No, it wasn't a rant. It was everything that people are experiencing and people want to hear. And so it's clear that you feel free, but, you know, I want you to use your own words. Like, do you feel liberated? Do you feel free? Do you feel detached from, you know, the old ways of living where you kind of sacrifice the majority of your time in a space away from your family? Do you feel free from that?
Yes. Resoundingly, yes, I feel free. I feel free because I freed myself. I feel satisfied at the end of every day with what I was able to accomplish, even when I have to accomplish it another day, because I give myself permission to not meet every goal.
Nice.
I give myself permission to take breaks and rest. My body thanks me for it. And so when my body shows me that rest was needed by feeling better after I've rested, then I feel satisfied. When my kids like just randomly say like, I love my life, right? After a trauma, that trauma is so distant. When they randomly hug me and say, you're a good mom, I have such satisfaction. So that's what gives me the freedom. Like, I don't know all of what freedom is, but I know for me, a big part of it is not being bound to the things that you don't want to be attached to. Like, I didn't want to be attached to long work hours anyway. Yeah, I had gotten trained that way, but I didn't want that. Deep down, that voice was always there. I didn't want to be attached to monetary, accumulation of mountains of coins as the defining, feature of success. That wasn't in my personality. I don't even wear brand stuff. Like, I've been buying clothes at Costco. I'm that mom. I just like, I want to be comfortable. So part of freedom for me is like being comfortable in my life, in my skin, seeing that my family is comfortable. We don't have too much. We don't have too little. And I decide what I need to put my energy into. And when it comes to the decision to put energy into myself, because that's a priority now, when I make that decision, I don't feel shame or guilt to put energy into myself, because I know I need it to be able to do what I can do for my community, for my family.
Ashe, Ashe. And so I want to close with asking you, what would you teach someone starting out in pre-med about this type of freedom? Because I think as community members, we have a responsibility to share what we learn, right? So like when you learn something, teach it. So what would you give someone who's starting out on the path that you started about 20 years ago?
Oh, that's a big question. First, I would say that a lot of that system of education is designed to tear you down. And it does that so that you learn the appropriate way of caring for another human life. And that's important. But as you are torn down to learn how to value human life and make good decisions, build yourself back up according to what you're good at and what is good for you. And don't compare that to the gunners. Don't compare that to what you think it should be. I think a lot of folks who go into service kind of fields, like the medical field, have a unique quality about them. Maybe it's their brilliance. Maybe it's their technical mind. They're extremely they can calculate things and they can see big pictures and zoom in and see finite details. But you might also have special abilities in connecting with people. You might have special abilities in comforting children or in comforting the elderly, or you might have an ability to teach other residents or other folks coming up, students coming up. So whatever your unique skill and talent is, nurture that and value that. Don't just value those other things, like the top grades and the top % of the class and all that other stuff, because it's grueling. It's grueling. You need to be confident in yourself to get through it. And when you come out of it, if you've nurtured that thing that's yours, then you can blend that into the career and let that guide your choices. So rather than just going for what you think is the top thing to go for in that specialty or in that area of medicine, if you've really nurtured yourself and allowed your qualities to shine through, you'll find your niche. And when you find your niche, the blossoming is real. You'll attract patients. You'll take good care of folks. You'll take good care of yourself. You have to value yourself, to be able to do that.
That's a gift. And thank you for that. That's something that I'm going to carry with me as a reminder. And I'm hoping that our audience members will carry it with them. There's a price to pay for being silent, and I'm glad that you're not. I'm glad that you're sharing your truth, and I hope it illuminates other people's experiences and stretches their ideas on what personal freedom looks like for them. Thank you, Dr. Ty Adams. Again, this has been a gift. It's been a privilege to talk with you. I appreciate being in community with you. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. I invite you to share this link. Check us out on all social media platforms. My name's Danica, and I'm going to see you in 2 weeks with another opportunity to get free together. Be well, everyone.